Welcome to tonight's Contra Costa Transportation Authority regular meeting. Please join me in the Pledge to Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We're now at public comment. Members of the public are invited to address the authority regarding any item not listed on the agenda. Please complete one of the speaker cards in advance of the meeting and hand it to the clerk of the board. And I have 4 cards from Mr. Hoffman, and they're all consent calendar items. So what I would like to do is allow you the normal speaking time for each one of those items, and you can address them now so we don't pull them off the consent calendar. Is that okay? So you'll have, what do we have, three minutes? So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4. You've got
the fourth one is not on the consent calendar.
Oh, it's not? Okay. My apologies. All right. So you got 3. So we're going to give you 9 minutes to address the first 3. The fourth one is what? 2. Let me. I'll figure it out. Go ahead and start.
I'm Ralph Hoffman from downtown Walnut Creek, home of the free electric trolley. And I don't know if any of you saw the East Bay Times front page today, but it seems that Governor Brown and our state legislature know that politics is the art of compromise, and President Trump and Congress do not. That's pretty much my public comment. As far as those 2 consent items that I've pulled, I'm just standing to speak in favor of 4B3 and 4B4, and I won't take up any more of your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else here for public comment? Okay, thank you. The next item is approval of the last meeting's minutes. Do I have a motion?
Second.
Okay, motion by Hudson, second by Pierce. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none. Okay, the next item is the consent calendar, and there's one item on the consent calendar, item 2.1, that I need to abstain from, and ordinarily I would recuse myself, but if this is staying on the consent calendar, I'm just going to abstain because I have a conflict of interest. PG&E is one of my architectural firm's clients, and so that's why I want to be shown as abstaining on item 2.1. Do we have a motion on the consent calendar?
So moved.
Okay, motion by Arnrick, second by Roenick. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. So that brings us down to item 4A10, legislative update.
Good evening, Chair Budd and Commissioners. My name is Luna Salaver. I'm filling in for Lindsay while she's on leave. Mark Watts is unable to join us this evening, so I'll provide some highlights of both the federal and state legislative actions. This month's federal report includes the availability of a $1.5 billion Department of Transportation Infrastructure for Rebuilding America grant. This is in line with the current administration's principles to help rebuild America's infrastructure, and we intend to apply for a $25 million grant for the 684 Phase 3 project. The deadline for this application is November 2nd, 2017. Another federal update of note is the administration's movement on key transportation appointments. The Senate Commerce Committee approved 3 nominations. David Piscoki, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, for TSA Administrator, Derek Kahn for Undersecretary of Transportation for Policy, Robert Sumwalt as board member of NTSB, and in addition, President Trump announced his plan to nominate retired Conrail executive Ron Battery as administrator for the FRA. The House Committee on Appropriations Subcommittee on Transportation, Housing, and Urban Development reported its fiscal year 2018 Transportation, Housing, and Urban Development Bill to the full Appropriations Committee. Notably, this legislation zeroes out funding for the popular Tiger Grant program, provides $1.75 billion for the Capital Investment Grant Program, which is $660 million less than last year's fiscal year's funding, and prevents any funding from going towards California High-Speed Rail Authority. Now, closer to home regarding state activities, on Monday, you may have heard, the legislature approved 2 key measures to guide California's climate change policy until 2030. The one that benefits transit is AB 398, which extends the cap and trade program to December 30th, 2030. And in addition, the bill establishes a price ceiling for auction allowances and limits the use of carbon offsets. So these revisions are expected to benefit transit programs by creating a more robust auction proceeds, which will benefit the Transit and Intercity Rail Capital Program and Low Carbon Transit Operations Program, which gets 15% of all annual auction proceeds. An update on SB 595, also known as the Bay Area Toll Bridge Regional Measure 3. This bill requires voters of the 9 Bay Area counties to approve new toll rates on the 7 Bay Area bridges. And if approved, the proposed RM3 will be put on the ballot for November 2018. RM3 establishes a new Office of Inspector General within BART and includes a maintenance of effort provision applicable to BART to ensure Measure RR funds are not used to supplant current funding or repurposed to support BART operation, and we support this. Randy's going to talk a little bit more about RM3.
Thank you. So we need a support position on whether or not we support as an authority the maintenance of effort provisions and also the Inspector General. And so that's something that we're going to be looking for. So as far as, before I get into RM3, let me talk a little bit and add something to the federal proposal. So our funding push has been for $25 million for test beds that are actually testing that have been designated by US DOT as an autonomous vehicle proving ground. And so when Commissioner Hudson and we all went back to Washington, D.C. and met with our legislators, federal legislators, our push was for $25 million. So in the Appropriation Acts, they have $100 million in appropriation for highly automated commercial vehicle research and development program. So that's auto. That's our truck program. And so they're supporting our efforts, and there's language there showing strong support by Congress to support the 10 DOT proving grounds and directing DOT to support them. So when we became a authorized testing facility by US DOT, it said no money. But now Congress is trying to push that because they're getting excited about this technology and want to see the advancement of this technology. So we will keep you informed as our progress in that area. So now let's talk about RM3. So in front of you have a package that says RM3 for Contra Costa County, and then you have a CCTA staff analysis of the RM3 proposal. So let me go through your packet here with Regional Measure 3 for Contra Costa County. And so basically what these charts show you is kind of the share of the toll revenue. So we'll refer to 18.4% as our share. That is the percentage of Contra Costans using fast tracks, crossing the toll bridges, that's what they pay. The largest supporter or payer of the tolls using fast track transponders is Alameda County, and I believe they're at 31%. So together we make up almost 50% of the tolls. So you got to keep that in mind. 18.4 cents us, 31% Alameda County. So the next page, it's back to back. This shows you toll transactions by bridge for county on a typical weekday, once again using toll tag information. So the second line down in yellow, and you go all the way across, we're ranked number 2. That's 18.4% on the right-hand column. Supervisor, it's right here. It's right behind it. Do you see that? So so the yellow line going all the way across, 18.4%. That's our using toll tags. The toll tags are registered in Contra Costa County. That's an important number. So then you go to page number 2, which would be the front side of page number 2, and on the back side, which would be backside of page number 2, you have the 7 toll bridges. That's the directional destinations, either northbound, westbound, eastbound, or southbound by bridge. So that will tell you and helps you analyze whether there's a nexus to the toll bridge. Because if nobody's, for example, Highway 37, the nearest toll bridge to Highway 37 is the Carquinez Bridge. So if you go down to the Carquinez Bridge on the page number 2, the front side, Carquinez Bridge, and you take a look at Sonoma County, in the northbound direction, it's 0K, there's nobody, basically 1%. Southbound direction, we're in Sonoma County, is 0. So nobody uses the Carquinez Bridge in either direction. So there's no nexus to the bridge, at least in my opinion. I'm not going to say in everybody's opinion. So then the last page is kind of a wrap-up, which we've given you a large document that looks like this. This is our proposal, and we're going to run you through this really quickly, hopefully. So you have 4 columns. Column number 1, this is the latest chart that we got based on, it's the expenditure plan. Oh, yeah. So anyway, this is broken down, column 1, column 2, column 3, column 4. So what I learned when I worked for Caltrans and worked for Secretary McPeak as we were working on Proposition 1B is you got to come up with the principles first before you slice and dice. Supervisor, you understand what I'm saying. So we used to, she used to just talk about that all the time. So we sat down and said we got to develop the guiding principles. So the first principle should be, if the toll payers are using the bridge, there should be a nexus to the bridges. So it should have a nexus, direct nexus to the bridge. And we can argue the second and third priority, but what you have taught me in the 7 years I've been here is geographical equity. So we want to make sure we get our fair share. So we put that number 2, staff did. You didn't do that. Number 3, it was designed to improve the accesses to the bridge so the toll payers can get across the bridges that they pay access to easier. That was our third priority. And lastly, we get to choose our priority projects with our allocation, our dollars. So those are the 4 guiding principles that we use. We can argue there may be other principles or the order of those, but we've done the Secretary McPeak kind of approach and taken a look at guiding principles. So then we went to column number 1 and we looked at that, and at first blush, when you look at that on column number 1, you go, oh my God, there's no dollars for Contra Costa. There's only $150 million. But that's not really fair. And the only direct project we could see was 684 and transit enhancements for $150 million. So I would say there's there's 3 commissioners that were not very happy about that. They all sit on MTC. You can figure out who they were. Got a phone call. Did you know about this? So on and so forth. And so we sat down, and the team here at CCTA, and we said, well, let's go column number 2. Once again, through the principles, let's figure out, is there money, so we don't argue we only got one project, is there some benefit to Contra Costa residents, toll payers in this case, in each item? And so I can go through that if you'd like, and I'll do it fairly quickly. Transbay Terminal, probably no money for Contra Costans, and you can argue that point. Ferry boats, we don't meet the fare box returns, so we zeroed that out for us. Regional express buses, we use the 18.4 cents per percent. That's our fair share. So we just did the math, 20 million times 18.4, $3.7 million a year. Bridge we have 0, so bar expansion cost $50 million. We have 12.9% average weekday ridership, so we use that number, so our benefit is $64.5 million. Corridor express lanes, we just said we need $160 million, so we're probably going to get half because we're not going to get whole, so we used $80 million of the $300. But remember that in the process, Solano County used to have a separate line item for express lanes. They moved that up, and so the pie just got smaller. So when you're hungry and you have another brother or sister added to that mix, you're going to get less food depending on how big your brother and sisters are. So we just looked at it as a haircut. We said $80 million. That's staff's analysis of half of what we need. Goods movement, zeroed that out. Safe routes to school, $27.6 million out of the $150, and that's assuming an 18.4% share of the tolls. Ferry boats, once again, we zeroed that $325 million because we don't meet the fare box return. Back to Silicon Valley, we looked for a nexus to any bridge in the whole area, and we couldn't find one, so staff said we don't get any of that. SMART, Sonoma, Marin area rapid transit, it runs up and down 101. Once again, the Golden Gate might be in that nexus, but that's not a toll bridge for us, so we said no nexus to bridge. Capital Corridor connections out of the $90 million, 18.4 cents. We assume all that's going to go to Hercules, $16.2 million would be our fair share. Caltrain, once again, no nexus to the bridge, runs up and down the peninsula. There's no toll bridge, so we said no benefit to Contra Costa County. Muni, there's no benefit to Contra. There could be some with the first and last mile, but we put no benefit, and maybe that's unfair. But we can run that number up a little bit if you'd like. Core capacity, serving the Bay Bridge connector. There may be some AC transit. I'm not really sure, but there could be some dollars there, but we put a 0 there. AC Transit, bus rapid improvements, we caught AC Transit there. They're about 12.5% coverage in Contra Costa County, so $6.25 million. New Transbay BART tube, once again, 12.9% average daily ridership, so $6.5 million. Tri-Valley Transit Access, that's BART to Livermore, so probably no benefit to Contra Costa. East Ridge to BART, that's really BART to San Jose. And so no nexus to the bridge, once again, running up and down the peninsula. The Diridon Station, I think Julie is probably the only one, or Amy is probably the only one here that's ever set foot in the Diridon Station. Probably no benefit, no nexus to the bridge, no benefit to Contra Costans. Dumbarton Rail, Ace, Shin Station, didn't really know where that was, but Dumbarton is a bridge, and so we figured we do have a nexus if it's the Dumbarton Bridge, so we kept that in. 10192. We kept that in. There's a nexus to the bridge. North 684, $150 million, 100% in Contra Costa. It's going to benefit us, so that's our project. Marin Sonoma Narrows running up and down 101. It's going to widen 101. Once again, no nexus to a toll bridge, so there's no benefit to Contra Costa. I-80, I-680, State Route 12, no benefit to us potentially, but a nexus to the bridge. It does benefit us a little bit in hindsight. $175 million. The westbound I-80 truck scales, that's coming toward the Bay Area. Benefits Contra Costa maybe a little bit, but we put 0. Highway 37, no nexus to the bridge. We used the second chart showing the direction. Very difficult. Nobody goes to Sonoma off that bridge, so how do you prove a nexus to the bridge? San Rafael Transit Center and /SMART, $30 million. We left it, but no benefit to Contra Costa. Marin 101, 580. Once again, 24% of the toll payers residing in Contra Costa going across that bridge, the Richmond-Santa Fe, so we took credit for $32.4 million. North Bay Transit improvements, 18.4% of the tolls, 18.4 million of the $100 million. And then State Route 29, we couldn't find a nexus to the bridge. So our total rises from $150 million, as we in first blush the analysis, to $402 million, which means that we're $371 million short if you buy into the equity issue. Once again, you've said to staff over and over, it's about geographical equity. We haven't forgotten that. So that was our first analysis. So then staff, this is on us, this is on me, we went in and we went and proposed RM3 based on if there's no nexus to the bridge, we're going to put those dollars on our projects. And that was the thesis. So there's no change in the first three for operating program. But when you get into regional capital, we said, okay, on the second line, so bridge rehab is still zero. If BART is the best way to move a large number of people that's on this list, then let's just go ahead and double the amount from 500 million to $1 billion. It carries a lot of people, and so let's get that correct, because we pledged 300 million out of Measure X. And so let's go ahead and support that, but let's support it right. Let's get that car buying spree done. And then once again, we calculated our fair share based on the 12.9% average weekday loading from Contra Costa. Maybe right, maybe wrong, but we wanted more money on BART. We increased the corridor express lanes by 100 million of those dollars from these reds where it says no nexus to bridge. We zeroed those out and used the dollars in this area. So we said we should have more for the express lane, because once again, they carry a lot of people in the future in theory because of the HOV lanes. So we said we need 150 million, 100 million for Innovate 680, and 50 million for Express Bus Technology, getting that corridor ready for the future. And the next line, under goods movement, we added San Pablo Dam Road for $64 million. We added 60 million to the 125 to get to 185. 64 million is what we need to raise that structure, because it's getting hit all the time by trucks. So when it gets hit, you shut 80 down and you don't have any goods movement. So 64 million. Once again, that's staff's estimate on what we can do with those dollars. We increased the Bay Trail Safe Routes to School by 50 million to 200 million, which makes our share 36.8 million. We can build those difficult connections that the bicycle community and the walking pedestrians want, and so it's going to take more money. We had 162 million in our proposal, but this is a start to leverage with our Transportation for Livable Communities and Bike, Ped, and Trail program. The next ferry boats, we decided, well, if we're going to increase it by 25 million, let's take 20 million. That's half about the operating expenses of Richmond to San Francisco of the 42 million. So we'll take 20, and we'll take that measure money, and we'll pull it back into Measure J, and we'll allocate it to either Hercules and make some improvements there to increase ridership, because there may be some things that we can do in the future, or it could be a different business model in the future as well, maybe not the public sector. So there's a lot of opportunity there. Once again, it's staff's best estimate. So parts of Silicon Valley, no nexus, we reduced that to zero. Smart, reduced that to zero. Didn't make any changes on the Capital Corridor connection. As you go into the central area, no nexus for Caltrain, so we reduced that to zero. We didn't make any changes to Muni. We didn't make any changes to the core capacity, and we didn't make any changes to AC Transit. We did add 55 million to the BART tube. That is a constricting point for BART, so if it's a problem and it moves more people, then let's go ahead and make an investment and fix the darn thing and get that thing built. Get it along the way to help our people, Contra Costans, Alamedans, to get into San Francisco and San Francisco to work. The next one is we added I-80. We put $100 million. We've got this fantastic study done in the West County. What we want to do is we want to fund the improvements that are necessary to do that, implement some of the high-capacity study improvements that have been suggested. So $100 million for Contra Costa County. It benefits more than just Contra Costa County. Tri-Valley Transit Access, we determined that's BART to Livermore, and we didn't change it. East Ridge to BART, no nexus, we reduced that to zero. The Diridon Station, once again, I think Amy's the only one here that's ever been in that station.
She got lost.
Dumbarton Rail, Ace, Shin Station, no change. We assume it says Dumbarton in it, so it must be some kind of thing to the Dumbarton Bridge. 101-92, no change. So on the 684 transit enhancements, we added $150 million to that to make it $300 million, and included the State Route 4 operational improvements, so it's widening of 4 coming down the hill. On Marin Sonoma Narrows, once again, no nexus, so we reduced that to zero. No change to the interchange there at 680-8012. And we increased by 30 million at the I-80 truck scales. And the idea there is, if you're going to build a fantastic, what? 680. So we added $30 million to the I-80 westbound truck scales. Why do we need the truck scales at Treat in 680? So we added $30 million to remove the weigh station, do some operational improvements at that site. And that land is very, very valuable when you think about buying it and trying to do something to either bring in a direct connector into Walnut Creek, Pleasant Hill. So, anyway, an idea that we had. 37, no nexus, or no change, sorry, Highway 30, no. Highway 37, no change. No, that, there's,
There's no nexus to bridge, there's 150
no,
million.
yeah, I think we zeroed that out. Is that right, Sean? Yeah, we zeroed that out because there's no nexus to bridge. So on your chart, that should show 0. I think the math is still right. I think that's where we got the 150 million to go down up to 684. So the San Rafael Transit Center / Smart. Smart has no nexus, so take that off. No other changes. That was just staff's recommendation. 101-580 increased by 65 million with $100 million for toll plaza improvements that.
I'm sorry, Randy, can you go back,
Yes.
because maybe that, on column 2, or the assumptions, it says no nexus to bridge on San Rafael Transit, but then on the right, you say Smart has no nexus, so you're leaving 30 million for the San Rafael Transit Center?
Yes.
Oh, all right, okay.
Yeah. So Smart has no nexus, so why put it in there?
I see.
That's our guiding principles.
editorial.
Yeah, yeah, thank you.
The bridge, the transit center is tied to
Yeah,
the bridge,
no, I
but
get
not
that,
smart.
okay, gotcha.
So Marin 101-580 interchange, we increased that by 65 million, 100 million, split some way between the toll plaza improvements, basically knocking those toll plazas out to fix that weaving problem that you have in there in Chairman Butt's area. And the other piece is 580 Richmond Parkway. Once the metering aspects of the traffic coming toward Contra Costa in the evening is released, guess where the bottleneck goes? It goes to the Richmond Parkway. And so we need some dollars to make sure that we have enough capital to fix that problem before it happens, or somewhere in between there, as soon as we can. And then North Bay transit improvements, once again, 18.4% of the share, toll share, so no change. And then we added this little project in East County with the $50 million that were remaining, the Intermodal Center. We called it the East Contra Costa Intermodal Transit Station. You can still call it Brentwood. But the point is, we need to extend BART, and we need to have a train station out. We need to have an intermodal center out there. And it's between the Antioch Bridge and the Benicia Martinez Bridge. So that's staff. So then we came up, and once again, we've upheld our, at least staff's reputation of being very greedy. We actually exceeded our request, our fair share. So we actually exceeded guiding principle number 2 by 261 million. So we've asked, the total package on the right-hand column 4 is $1,034 million.
Some of that's sharing with other counties, so.
Yes.
Okay.
But that's our best estimate on what we would do.
Commissioner Hudson?
Randy, can we go back up to this new Transbay BART tube? I mean, is this a capital project, what are we talking about? A new tube from somewhere to somewhere, or
Yeah.
branching off of the current one into Transbay Terminal?
It's basically, no, it's actually farther down. It's from the East Bay to the West Bay at some point. It wouldn't go into, there's no, well,
There's no
Julie, go ahead.
connection now.
Julie, go ahead.
Yeah.
Actually, the conversations that are being held by the Bay Area Council have it as a parallel tube,
Okay.
That's what I'm confused.
and that it allows two-way traffic instead of single tube with everybody having to merge in. It actually gives 2 lanes each way.
Okay, and it goes into the Transbay Terminal, not, you know my problem.
Yeah,
Two things.
that's
One-
what their goal is, whether they can do it or not. And this money is really just to get the planning done and figure that out.
Yeah.
They don't have a project on paper yet. It's all conceptual, and they know it's going to cost a fortune to figure this out.
Okay. I mean,
So-
I'm fine with it going in Transbay Terminal. I think that is the way to go. I would caution ever increasing money while Joe Keller's here, because it's never enough. I mean, it's, when you said that, I almost fainted. I can't believe you, well, let's increase it. I can just see him now, why don't we go to 10 billion or 15 or 20? But, I mean, I think this is a good idea, yet I wish we had some say in whatever it is, it doesn't end up in Embarcadero, because that makes every other bottleneck look like it isn't a bottleneck. It's a mess over there. But, I mean, I would hope that they could do something about that.
Can I respond? Can I reply? You know, Dave, I think your point is well taken, that there is no capacity at Embarcadero BART Station. I think as Julie indicated, the goal would be to have it go across and link with the Transbay Terminal. I mean, you know, something like that where you have the capacity, because it's not going to help to just pour double the people into the Embarcadero Station.
Well, that's part of it, yes. And sorry, Mr. Chair, we sort of taken over your meeting here. But as we've looked at this at MTC and what the plans are, right now, it is not planned to go into the Transbay Terminal. There is a potential link that can be opened between Embarcadero and the Transbay Terminal. It's the same hike you take to the Metro Center, basically, except it's all underground, all covered, probably a moving beltway, that kind of thing. But where they can put this and how they can do it is going to depend on a lot of the engineering, all that kind of thing. Whether they can figure out a way to get it to go directly into the Transbay Terminal or not, we don't know that yet. I don't think it was planned to do that. I don't think the Transbay Terminal was planned for that, because the only access in the Transbay Terminal right now is that underground tube from Embarcadero over to the Transbay Terminal basement itself. And that's planned as that, third of a mile walk underground from one station to another. Whether they can come up with something better or not, that's all yet to be determined. That's where this $100 million is needed to figure out what the project is, and then we have to fill the project.
It's not for a new tube, it's for planning.
Right.
It's for planning for a new tube. Absolutely. It's going to cost at least that much just to plan it.
So before I go to Commissioner Trotter, one thing, this is an informational item, right?
No, it's actually an action item. So you don't have to take an action on this. We just need some direction as staff on what we need to present to our elected officials, because.
Well, that was my next question, is what are we going to do with this? Are we going to?
We have started to voice our displeasure on the initial expenditure plan that we saw. So what we need to do is come up with, in our opinion, a counter proposal that is justifiable using guiding principles that people then would not. They could argue the dollars, but if they buy into the guiding principles, then I think our logic is okay. But if we didn't have guiding principles, we just threw money around. By the way, there's another $150 million somewhere in here, because we didn't add the zeroing out this 37 and putting over on the right side. But we need guidance from you, all of you as a board, to tell us, what is it that we need to go in armed with, so that we can articulate what our request would be if this legislation moves forward to the vote of the people.
Can I add to that?
So, Commissioner Trotter, and then, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have one observation, which is that we should try really hard to include an Amy Worth, surcharge on our case. But leaving that aside, I'm looking at the category Bay Trail Safe Routes to Transit. And I don't know how that category got created, Randy, whether it's too limited just to be referring to the Bay Trail, whether there should be other regional trail funding in that category that's not there currently.
Correct. So when we met with Assemblymember Baker, she's also an attorney, and as she said very succinctly, the devil's in the details, and the details aren't there yet. So that's the other piece, is the language that guides the investment, and we don't have enough information. So what we're trying to do is apply a little bit of reason to how we think the dollars ought to be allocated along the way. So that's the problem that you see, is there's no clarity on exactly what those dollars are good for, and that's one of the problems that Assemblymember Baker was articulating to Art Dow and I as we were briefing her on whether or not Alameda, and Alameda doesn't like the draft expenditure plan either.
But they want their own $1 billion, I'm sure.
Well, at least, because they generate a lot of toll revenue,
Right.
Alameda.
So, I mean, my observation is simply that if I were directing staff on this, I would suggest that that particular category, we get some clarity on, so it's not limited to just one trail that's around the bay. It ought to be all, not necessarily all trail, but all regional trails. Right, yeah. Then that, I think, would be a very good add, in my opinion, and it might also change the nexus in how you calculate the percentages here. I don't know, maybe not, maybe not. Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Worth.
I just wanted to follow up on the question about process. So essentially, the challenge with this measure is very different from the transportation sales tax measures, where you have the local folks that do all the outreach, what we've all done for X, J, and C. The state, because they're state bridges, the state legislature has the authority to develop the expenditure plan. So what they did with RM2 was they developed an expenditure plan. It passed the legislature, was signed by the governor. It comes to MTC, and all MTC has the authority is to do thumbs up or thumbs down. So at this point, this plan is moving through the legislature. We've been engaging with our legislative delegation, and then at some point, it either passes, gets changed, and passes or fails, and then moves through that process, and then it would come to MTC. MTC's had several meetings to discuss sort of general concepts, general principles, looking at corridors. That's why this is shaped the way it is. I think Julie and Federal and I have been very consistent in our message that really reflects these principles that have been outlined that Randy talked about. So that's kind of where we are. As you mentioned, the legislation right now contemplates a November of 2018 ballot. There's been a lot of discussion about doing it in June. So that's kind of where it is. So the legislature has seen this. They came up with this plan at the last Friday. It was the first time we'd seen it. And they're going to take a break and probably bring this back in August. So that's when it'll, obviously the caucus is hearing from their people. So Julie probably has something to add to that.
Commissioner Arnold.
Thank you. I just wanted to weigh in, too. I think we're taking the right approach. First of all, in order to get this passed, we have to be able to, as the local agency who's going to have a hand in this, to tell our voters why we will consider supporting this. So if we can't come up with a list that we support, then we can't certainly come out and do that. And the rule is lead and others will follow. So Randy, and I agree with the one comment on the trails. There are other details, but the fact is, let's get going. Let's do this. This is the right thing to engage in a positive way. That we're here to do a positive thing because this is what works for the needs of our county. The legislature is doing this because they want to see the success. They want to see that we're demonstrating that we're really fixing real problems. So, I would, if we want to make a motion to this, I would move that we give staff the authority to continue on this with some tweaks, bring it back to us, but move as quickly as possible because, as Julie's pointed out and Amy has, we got one shot and we're low on the poll, so we need to make sure that MTC is hearing us and is also welcoming our input as well as they should from the other counties. Otherwise, they're going to be the leading force to push their agenda. So I'd move this item with that context.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second for discussion,
Okay.
and then I have a discussion.
Yeah,
Motion by Arnick, second by Pierce. Commissioner Romick?
I mean, she wanted to go ahead, Julie.
Well, I'd like to add to the motion just a little bit, if I might, with the pleasure of the maker. One of the things we need to be specific about in our direction tonight is our support for the principals, but very specifically the support for an Inspector General for BART. Our support for a maintenance of effort for the BART funding that was passed in the bond measure must go for capital improvements. It can't be squished around. And prior to the meeting here tonight to get our direction formally, Amy and I asked Randy to share with our legislators the language that we put into Measure X, because we knew that had been approved by us. But as we all know, that discussion wound up being a tempered one from what most of us really wanted. We wanted it to be stronger than what we wound up with. And I think expressing that as a bare minimum for the maintenance of effort language is really essential. So that's one of those. The other thing is we need to re-emphasize in our communications with our legislators, every one of them, that this is a toll paid by our people. This is a 50% increase in the toll paid by our residents. That is a huge amount of money when you get right down to it. What allows a toll to vote at a 50% majority level for passage is that it is a fee that can be directly linked to the benefit that our toll payers get back. That is our strongest argument to say that we deserve our fair share of this, that 18.4% of those tolls come out of our pockets in Contra Costa. We should get at least that much back to Contra Costa toll payers as a benefit. And we have to be able to make that argument as strongly as we possibly can. So as any one of us is talking with our legislators, we need to emphasize we are adamant about that. We realize that a lot of these other projects on this list are very valuable regional projects. But unless they have a direct nexus to the bridge, we stand in jeopardy of this thing being challenged by its nexus qualifications. It doesn't conform to AB 1600 that we all learned about way back when in planning school. And it could be challenged legally as to whether it conforms. And so I'm very concerned about that. That's not to say this is the only pot of money to pay for some of these other things. There may have to be another source for some of these projects that are not bridge related. I mean, there just might be. But we did not get our fair share out of RM2. We came closer because of the Caldecott Tunnel, but we were pretty much left behind. So it's time that our toll payers get that benefit. And the other specific direction I want in this motion is the direct direction to staff to send a letter from us to Assemblymember Frazier as the chair of the Assembly Transportation Committee and tell him that the money for the I-80 truck scales in the westbound direction must be enhanced to include taking away the truck scales at the Treat location in our northbound 680, which is obstructing our ability to get our improvements done where we need to do it. That there's a whole Lawrence Way, North Main Street, and Treat Boulevard area that needs to be really significantly improved as we're working on that project. And as Randy said, with a enhanced truck scale in the now northbound direction on 80 already complete, that's really kind of duplicative of the one that we have. To add the one in the westbound direction really makes the ones in our area of Treat not necessary.
You want both of them out?
So
Both
I
sides.
want them both out.
Yeah, right.
I want them both out. We
absolutely.
need the space to do what we need to do to make the traffic flow in this part of, I mean, nobody's ever gone through that interchange and not been slowed down because of the traffic jam right in that area. So I want us to send a very specific letter on that issue. But those principles must be upheld.
So three things. Inspector General and BART, maintenance of effort, reemphasize to the legislature 50% of our toll payers are the ones doing this, and this is a direct nexus. And then the letter to Frazier regarding removal of the tree, truck scales on both sides.
And then
Agreed.
excuse me, would make the change to the language, the suggestion about the regional trails.
Yeah.
Because this came from that expenditure.
Yeah,
plan,
I
so we'll add that,
agree
yeah.
with that. Yeah,
Okay,
absolutely.
so you accept all those suggestions. Commissioner Roman?
Yeah, one last question. I thought in our original project list that we had dollars set aside for a connector from Vasco to the Byron Airport.
We can't make a nexus to the.
Oh, well, I mean, it was part of the, I know it was part of the original list. I'm just wondering,
But not a toll bridge nexus.
yes, okay.
Good, try them.
I mean, well, it was in our project list in the first one.
If we get bought out, we can put it
Iron Horse Trail that we're passing.
So a couple of observations before we vote. You know, if you look at this list, there's 7 toll bridges here, right? 4 of them land in Contra Costa County, more than any other county. So I think that's a fact that you ought to point out and underline.
It all runs through us, but we don't get credit for it.
Right. And so the second thing is, you know, we just had a long discussion with Assembly Member Thurman and Senator Skinner today on this, and particularly Senator Skinner was emphasizing that that what the legislature was looking for is where the votes are coming from. So maybe the message is they're not really concerned about fairness. They're concerned about where the votes are. And apparently Contra Costa County is not a county they normally count on for being, you know, for carrying these things heavily. But the third thing I want to say is that I think that we need to emphasize that if we're not treated fairly, you know, we may very well take a position in opposition to this, and say that very strongly, and make sure the message is out there that we just, you know, this is not just a wish list. This is, you want this organization to endorse this, you want Contra Costa to vote for it, then you got to treat us fairly. And finally, just to show how egregious this is, you know, the project that's up in my city, the Richmond-San Rafael Bridge, this proposed list has got $135 million in it to improve the whole east end of the bridge all the way to 101 and make life easier for Marin County residents. 0 for the Richmond end of the bridge, you know. I just don't understand how somebody could come up with something and just say, you know, we're going to give it all to Marin and the rest of you guys can suck it up, you know. So, anyway.
Can I just add? Mr. Chair, well said. You know, I think you will all share, you know, the outrage of seeing that initial plan. And when you see this, which is a thoughtful analysis of expenditures relative to the bridge toll nexus. But I also want to really add thank you to staff. We started on the phone at 7:30 in the morning last Friday when this stuff started hopping, and it literally was the first time that we had the benefit of seeing this expenditure plan. And staff has worked 24/7 between Friday and now. So I really want to thank everyone Hisham and Tim and Randy, who really helped us kind of frame this in terms of really making the case that we kind of all knew intuitively, because that's the way we do business in Contra Costa County. But this document really puts the dollars in the projects to the programs. And I think Newell really put it well. You know, we need to have a program that we can all convey to our constituents that we believe in this. And so thank you all for your endorsement.
Okay, myself being a time capsule, this has got rather long, very lengthy, with a lot of facts and the rightful things that probably should be in it. And then we said we wanted to do this fast. So what does fast mean?
What does staff mean?
No, fast.
When are we getting
What-
Fast?
Yeah, when do we get this back, and is this for the entire board approval?
This is it.
So it's
We're
never come-
authorizing staff to write this letter and reflect it as the opinion of the full board.
if I may, try to negotiate, this is negotiations, we're giving.
Well, that's what I'm trying to
We're
say.
giving them the direction to negotiate, do the letter, include the additional items that we talked about, and that we do it now. We don't have time. The legislature is going to pass this, and then it's done. So in a way, it won't ever come back to us, other than we'll find out what happened. But we're asking the board to we're giving staff the authority on our behalf to go negotiate the best that they can.
So like for me, my city, with Jim Frazier right there in my office, he's like 45 feet from me. Do I need to get on his doorstep and say,
Yes.
this you better take care of?
You need to lie down in front of his door.
He knows this. He's looking forward to having us do this. He has to convince others. He's not the only decision maker. He's on our side.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Mitchell.
Thank you. I just want to add to that, Randy has a very good relationship with Mr. Frazier, and there are other legislators who represent Contra Costa County. Mr. Frazier represents a very small portion of Contra Costa County, but he is the chair. So I'm going to, as much as I love you, Mr. Taylor, and lying down in front of Mr. Frazier's office, I think that it's Randy's relationship with Jim that's going to be the one that gets this. I think our other legislators would be on board with this. How could they not be? But we all know that the chair of a committee drives a lot of things, and I think the message can be shared verbally. The letter has to say certain things, but and I won't look to you if it doesn't happen, Randy, that it was any inability on your part, because I know you'll do your best to do it. But Mr. Frazier needs to understand that this is his home base, and that he's gotten a lot from CCTA, and therefore he needs to know that we need this from him. And I felt it important to state that on the record.
Commissioner Trotter.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think in view of Chairman Butt's 4/7 math on the bridge, that would suggest that 18.4% ought to be only a floor from where we are going here with this, and I couldn't agree more with that. That's all I have. Thank you.
Mr. Hudson.
I heard somewhere in this conversation that you and Art Dow were in Catherine Baker's office about this. Did you hear anything about this Tri-Valley Transit Act, the Art to Livermore, about getting more money? What was their priority? Which is, I mean, we do connect to that.
I would answer at MTC, the discussion has been priority from Alameda for BART to Livermore and Dumbarton Rail.
Okay.
Those are the two big projects.
But it's my understanding they're fairly well funded. This isn't $100 million that puts them over the hump, or they need this $100 million and more?
Dumbarton Rail, this is a drop in the bucket.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, we're ready to vote?
Yeah.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you.
Thank you,
Mr. Chair,
Commissioners.
may I please just say to staff, thank you. Amy alluded to it, but they literally, we've been texting back and forth all weekend trying to get information. Amy and I have been on the phone with legislators, with others, talking about this. We know that they have as well. And thanks actually to Mark Watts, because our first indication of what the list looked like was a photograph of a list that got yanked back away. And that's what we were operating on all weekend, to give us a heads up on where to go. So thank you. And Hisham is the miracle worker with the numbers. He can put any chart together. So thank you all very much.
Okay, next item, 4A11, Interstate 680, High Occupancy Vehicle Completion and Express Lanes Project.
Good evening, Chair Butt and Commissioners. Susan Miller, Director of Projects. I'll be giving you a brief update on the 680 Express Lane project. So the project completes the carpool lane in the southbound direction and then converts the carpool lane to an express lane. And we're doing this project in partnership with MTC and with BAFA, who are providing funding for the express lane portion of the project. So I'll be going over a schedule update. We'll be talking a little bit how we're going to be addressing local pre-construction and project construction impacts, primarily in Walnut Creek and Alamo area, and what we're going to be doing for local outreach. And then we'll have a brief Q&A time slot for you. So update on the schedule. The project to the south, the MTC project, which has been under construction, and it is converting the carpool lanes in both southbound and northbound direction from about Livorno to the county line. And our project, which starts at Martinez-Benicia Bridge and goes down to Livorno, will meet up with the MTC project. They're slated, they're in the testing phase right now. You probably noticed they're testing on their electronic signage. They'll be opening late September, early October. They should be opening those lanes.
What do the colors mean, Susan?
Pardon?
What do the different colors mean?
And I'll get to the different colors in just a minute. So the first project is the MTC project that we're talking about. The next project is the design bar, which talks about that will be done by us. So the darker blue is what we are doing, the lighter blue is what others are doing, and then we have a pre-construction contract we'll be talking about, which will be some tree removal and then some follow-on landscaping, and that's in the gold. So as far as the status of our project, we completed the environmental document in December. We've completed 95% design. We have comments back from Caltrans, and we're incorporating those comments and working on a 100% plan. So we expect to have those completed by the end of the calendar year. Our goal, and we'll be doing the contract administration, the authority will be to advertise and then award in early 2018. We do have, I'll continue some discussion, and then there's a follow-on item by Ivan Ramirez, our construction manager, about going out with a early tree removal contract, and I'll be talking about why we're doing that in just a few minutes. The length of construction is actually rather long. It's about 2 years for our project, and then about a year of testing of all the electronic equipment. So that's why you see that long timeline bar, the second blue line for the project construction. Wow. We're considering concurrent with the testing, since we'll be done with most of the construction, we could go ahead and do the replacement planning project concurrent with that testing going on to get that in place, the landscaping replacement in progress as soon as possible. So just to remind you about a couple of important elements in regards to our project. The MTC project to the south has what's called continuous access. In other words, you can get in and out of those express lanes at any point. We, however, in our project, will be having 2 areas where we'll have what's called buffer lanes or restricted access. So there'll be a double white line that you're not to cross. And the reason we're doing that is to have a smoother flow of traffic in those areas where we have large volumes of traffic joining into the system from heavily used other adjacent interchanges and connectors. So we have a buffer from about 242 down to about North Main, and then we have a second buffer about in the Red Gear area down to Stone Valley. And that buffer is primarily because we do have what's called a double drop. We have a lot of merging going on and switching of positions. So that, again, will smooth the traffic through those particular areas. We've kind of already had some discussion about that. We're going to keep that reminder front and center with the public. The other item is the hours of operation. MTC will be opening their project with new hours for the carpool lanes, 5 a.m. to 8 p.m., so Monday to Friday. So it will be all-day operation for the carpool lanes and the express lanes. And we will be matching those hours with our project. And they also match the Sunol grade project and the 580. So the driver through the corridor will have the same hours and consistency in the hours of operation. And MTC is currently going around and getting that message out to everyone, too, before they open their lanes. So I want to talk a little bit about addressing local pre-construction and construction impacts. So primarily, our project is a combination of two things. To the north of 24, we're predominantly doing some restriping and repaving operations. We do have some widening. You'll see there on the item number 1 at the North Main Street on-ramp and overcrossing. So there's some widening there. And then at number 2, we have some widening at Ignacio Valley on-ramp. But that's really kind of localized widening. We're doing a lot of restriping and paving. But once you get south of 24, we have a lot more physical widening that we're doing to connect and add the carpool lane in to make sure we have standard shoulders, especially in the vicinity where we have the double lane drop. We feel it's important to have standard shoulders. To the north, we have some exceptions on shoulder widths. So a lot of the widening and a lot of retaining wall construction and sound wall replacement is going on in the Rudgear, vicinity of Rudgear. We're doing a bridge widening at South Main Street, so that's a very important corridor through that comes from South Main Street, that comes from downtown Walnut Creek, goes under 680, continues into Danville and the Alamo area. It's a heavily used frontage system. And then we're doing more widening by adding the additional lane. We're pushing the freeway over, if you will. So we're taking down some sound wall and retaining walls and widening and then constructing some new retaining walls and sound walls in the vicinity of South Main and Rudgear ramps and on the main line. We have utility relocation work, which on that schedule will be done by others. PG&E has an overhead line that crosses over the freeway in the vicinity of South Main. So we're working with PG&E. Hopefully they'll go to construction the end of the summer, early fall to underground that. It's going to be on South Main right through the bridge area underneath. So there'll be some disruption of some traffic in that vicinity. We'll be working on getting the message out on that. As I mentioned, we're going to be removing sound wall adjacent to South Main in the Rudgear vicinity and retaining wall. And that sound wall we're looking at right now could potentially be down for as long as 1 year. So that whole construction area is our critical path on the entire project. So we're working with our CM team to see how can we maybe reduce the schedule for having that sound wall down that long. We are going to be finishing a sidewalk at South Main. Right now there's a gap in the sidewalk system, and we will be completing that gap on South Main Street. We have ramp widening and a temporary detour, the loop on-ramp. Southbound South Main will be having to close that for a period of 2 to 3 months, and we'll be detouring to Rudgear. And then we're going to go in and rehab the entire section of localized street in that area because there's going to be so much construction going on and detouring. So we do intend to come back and do that. So that's our focus area where we really have a lot going on in Walnut Creek and Alamo. The other thing that will be occurring for a pre-construction contract, and the reason we want to do this is we want to avoid contractor delays due to nesting migratory birds. So we can go off-season and go ahead and remove trees from about September to mid-February. And we would like to go ahead and do that so we don't face any delay impact. There is a great number of trees. It's 500 to 550 4-inch diameter and above trees and shrubs that we need to come in and remove. Primarily, the majority of these are in Caltrans right-of-way. And again, that area along South Main and up on the freeway, the vicinity of the Alamo area, as you approach Livorno, not all the way to Livorno, but there's a big PG&E tower on the hill, I think you're familiar with, Commissioner Arnridge, that in that vicinity we'll be going through and removing trees. Then there's a very small area at North Main where there'll be some tree removal. Some of these are in the interchange areas that were previously planted. So those areas, as I mentioned, most of it is all in Caltrans right-of-way that will be coming out. So what are we going to do about informing the public to these, fairly significant impacts? How are we going to get the word out? Well, we've had numerous meetings already with Walnut Creek staff. We have another meeting with Walnut Creek staff coming up. We have met with Walnut Creek Mayor. and we intend to probably meet with him again this summer, and then we would like to go to the council. Potentially, we're looking at going in September to inform the council. We will be going to Transpac Board with the same update. I'm already on the agenda for the TAC meeting this month and the board meeting for September. We'll likewise working on going to SWAT and getting on those board agendas for a similar update. And we have already a date for the Alamo MAC in September, so we'll be going to the Alamo MAC and informing them in September. We're working on our project website. We have a project website, so we're working to get additional information on that and developing a fact sheet. And as I mentioned, the presentation to Walnut Creek City Council and others. We're also working on a direct mailer with this information about the project to get out to the local communities and businesses. And I think this worked very well on the Auxiliary Lane project. We had a very nice mailer that we did on a quarterly basis that would go out and inform the public, you know, what are we going to be doing, especially as far as replacement planting is concerned. Once we develop those plans for replacement planting, where we're going to be going back and doing some replacement planting within the limits of our project, we have been able to depict that and have additional meetings to let the community share what their thoughts are on that. So we'll be doing that, covering that. We're very likely going to be working on scheduling a neighborhood meeting in the Rudger area. We did go out there previously during the environmental process and had a neighborhood meeting, so I think we're going to try to utilize those mailing lists we have and get back out to that vicinity. And we'll be also publishing information in some local newsletters, such as The Nutshell and any other local newsletters that we can find. So with that, I would be happy to answer any questions you may have. I also have Sheena Patel here, who's the project engineer with HDR, and she can assist in answering questions.
This item actually has two sub-items. One of them is an update, which I think you've covered.
Yes.
And the second one is an action item. Have you covered that too, or is that going to be separately presented?
No. Ivan Ramirez, our construction manager, will be covering that item.
Okay, so we do have a public speaker on this. Mr. Hoffman, would you like to address the...
Ralph Hoffman, speaking for myself as a resident of downtown Walnut Creek. There has been a problem with driver-only cars cheating on carpool lanes, and I don't see anything in this project that would install cameras or anything on the freeway or even fake cameras, but we need some better enforcement, and not just by police, sheriffs, but we also need some kind of better way to enforce the lane cheaters. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Arnott.
Susan, thanks for the presentation. A couple of things come to mind. One, on the schedule, you kind of highlighted it. That's a really long schedule, and you look what's been done on the MTC project and their testing phase. Somehow, I think you should be challenging the entire design team to get this testing done in a more reasonable and figure out where we can start to do some overlaps. Then the other thing is my colleague to the left here, we're just talking about tree removal. You're talking a significant number of trees, and you mentioned some lessons we learned on the Auxiliary Lane project. One of the main things we learned, we denuded an entire 1.5 mile stretch of every living organism. And it was a street that used to look like your image of Sleepy Hollow. It had this huge tree canopy cover. But what really made it work, and it makes us as an agency look like we are different than Caltrans standard. Our standards were higher, that we came in with those very large box trees, which contractors always say we don't want to install them. We installed hundreds of those, and not one tree died during the worst drought we've had in the past 30 years. And it really worked. And these trees are above the sound wall, and they haven't even been there not even 12 months.
So I hope that we do that. I think we also need to see a tree removal plan.
Yeah.
To those, Supervisor Candace Anderson's not here, but if she was listening, that's the first thing. Yeah, so, and I think for Walnut Creek's benefit, but we really did learn lessons in that. And while, yes, somebody came up with the money from our area to help pay for that, I think we have to set our own high standards, because the public looks at it and goes, well, wow, you did take it up. That looks pretty nice. I've never had anybody compliment us after tearing something apart like that. You see these scrawny little trees that half die and they don't come back. This is impactful. It was really well done by the entire team. So I hope that that is part of this. But I think in all fairness, we want to make sure that we do see a tree removal. And are we removing, is the question, are we removing trees because they're in the way of actual physical construction because of roots and things like that? Or have we also added trees to that because it makes it easier, because then we don't have to do other mitigations?
They're in the way of physical construction.
Okay, and that's all we're removing. We're not, because sometimes, there are those who would say, well, if I remove back, then I don't have to do protections. We're doing kind of the minimum to accomplish this.
Correct.
Okay.
And we do intend to work with the community and work with Walnut Creek especially on coming up, as we did with Danville, with the town of Danville.
And I invite anybody, you should go look at it when you
with replacement
faint,
planting
and then
plans.
as you recover and wake up, when you see the impact it's going to be in an area, because some of those areas it's going to be 100% removal. I think if you go down and look at what was done, you'll go, wow, that's pretty good. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments on the status report? Okay, we'll go into item 4A11-2, authorization for the executive director to approve plans, specifications, and estimate, and to advertise an advanced tree removal contract.
Yes, good evening, Chair Butt and Commissioners. My name is Ivan Ramirez, and I am the construction manager for the authority. And this item is just a follow-up to what Director Miller was showing you in the presentation, which is that we want to, as quickly as possible, advertise this tree removal contract because time is of essence. The nesting season begins February 15th, and we have to go and remove 500-plus trees, possibly. So we need to have this contract go out as quickly as possible. So the authority is not going to meet next month. So we're asking, and the design package is not yet complete. So as soon as the design package is complete, our intent is to advertise the project as soon as possible. So the authority has contemplated just this kind of situation, and it approved the resolution number 1545P back in July of 2015, which gives the executive director the authority to approve the plans and specs. It's important that this step is taken because by you approving the plans and specs, it gives the authority design immunity. And so with that said, we're asking the authority to allow the executive director to approve the design to protect immunity pursuant to Government Code Section 830.6, publicly advertise the tree and bush removal contract, approve changes and issue addenda to the bidding documents, and to publicly open all bids when received. And with that, I'm open to any questions.
Any questions? Have a motion? Motion by Romick, second by Pierce. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. Next item, 4A12, Interstate 680 State Route 4 Interchange Improvements, Phase 3, Project 1117/6001. Authorization to begin contract negotiations with the HANA Group, Inc., and for the executive director to issue a notice to proceed for construction management services.
Again, Chair Butt, Ivan Ramirez, construction manager, and this is a action item where, as you stated, we are requesting authorization to begin contract negotiations with the Hanna Group, which is the firm that was selected by a panel that consisted of Stephanie Hugh from our staff, Kevin Amy from Contra Costa County, Andrew Baskerville from Caltrans, and myself for construction management services for this critical construction project. We advertised the request for proposal on April 21st, and we had a deadline to respond of June 8th. 5 firms responded to this request for proposal, and 4 of them were shortlisted. The 5 proposals were HDR, AECOM, SOMAS, the Hanna Group, and K+B Inc. 4 firms were shortlisted. Only K&B was not invited by the panel for an interview. After the panel questioning interview, the panel selected the Hanna Group as the winning firm. I want to note that the proposal allowed for points be allocated as local firms. The 4 firms that were shortlisted had points attributed to them based on their local workforce. And the HDR, AECOM, and the Hanna Group, they were able to collect all 7 points that are allowed. So with that, again, we ask for permission for the Executive Director to begin cross-run negotiations and to issue a notice to proceed so that we can begin the constructability and bidability of the contract in an amount not to exceed $100,000.
Any questions on this? Okay. Motion by Pierce, second. Who seconded it? By Romick. Before we vote, I brought this up at the APC meeting, and it's just a request, and it doesn't affect this, but I would like to see a little more information in the about the selection procedure. You know, like what were the categories of points? How many points was each one awarded? You know, when you add the points up, you know, what were they? I think it's important to provide a little more information on that than just simply providing the rankings. So with that in mind, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, next item, 4.1, Interstate 80 Central Avenue Operational Improvements, Project 7003, approval of Resolution 17-36-P for authorization to award and execute agreement number 463 with Gelati Brothers, Inc. for construction services.
Again, Chair Ivan Ramirez, Construction Manager, and this is a motion to award the construction contract to Gelati Brothers for construction services of the Interstate 80 Central Avenue Operations Improvement Project. The board authorized staff to advertise, administer, and award this contract. And with that end, we issue a solicitation proposal issued on June 1st, 2017, and with bids due on June 29th. So one of the things we monitor constantly is the number of plan holders that are signing up to receive to get the plans and then receive information. Staff quickly noticed that we didn't have the number of registered bidders or proposed bidders that we normally get. And so we began to make phone calls to the contractors that we know, and we quickly learned that currently the bidding environment is very competitive, and a lot of the firms were just turning down work, specifically to public agencies, just because they can get more work on the outside. And we have been able to confirm that information just because some of our jurisdictions are getting very few bidders. Some of them, the bids are double what the engineer's estimates are, and so on. So having said that, we expected 2 bids. Ultimately, we only had received 1 bid, and that's the one from Gelati Brothers. And it's a little over the engineer's estimate. The engineer's estimate was a revised engineer's estimate, by the way, of $664,000. And Gelati Brothers submitted a bid of $2,998,000. So that's about 12.5% over the engineer's estimate. And, compared to what I just said, where some of the bidders are coming at double and there's no bidders, I think that this is a pretty good bid after everything is said and done. There was 2 addendum were issued by staff. There was a irregularity with the bid that was submitted by Giuliani Brothers in the fact that they did not acknowledge addendum number 2. So staff worked with our counsel, and it was determined that that is a waivable error, and the reason is because when Giuliani Brothers submitted their bid, they submitted their bidder's security, and that's just a way of saying that should they not want to perform the work, we get to keep that security. And the fact that they submitted that security with the fact that there was an addendum basically acknowledges that they can do the work, and they submitted the bid according to the requirements of addendum number 2. And there's case history is quoted here on the staff report. So Kevin Hoyer, he is from Giuliani Brothers, he's right behind. He came over here. You wish to ask any questions of him, and we thank them for coming. And I want to know 2 more things about the bidding process. Number 1 is that we did the e-bidding for the first time, and it was successful. There's actually a video of us doing the opening on the YouTube site of CCTA, and we held it across the room. Normally we have it here, so it was webcasted, and we could tell at the time how many people were watching the bid opening. So it went well, and when we have more experience with the e-bidding, we're going to come back and share it with the board. And the second thing I want to note is that Giuliani Brothers is actually a great partnering firm. Mike Giuliani, I believe he's the owner. He sits with Randy Iwasaki at the International Partnering Institute board, I guess the executive board. So we're looking forward to working with this firm. Since I've been here, we haven't worked with Giuliani Brothers. So with saying all of that, staff seeks approval of Resolution 1736P, which waives the error in the bid and calls it immaterial, and authorizes the executive director to award the construction contract to Giuliani in the amount of $2,998,065.85, and for the chair to execute agreement number 463 with Giuliani. With that, I'm open to questions.
Questions?
I don't have any questions, but I'll make a motion.
Okay. Commissioner Abelson, you moved it. Second by Hudson. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. Item 4.2. By the way, you should have gotten a bid discount from him for that nice commercial you gave him,
Maybe I will.
Okay, next item, 4.2. State Route 4 widening, Summersville Road to State Route 160, Segment 3B, Hillcrest Avenue Interchange, Project 3001/1407. Approval of Resolution 17-24-P, accepting construction work under agreement number 351 with Bay Cities Paving and Grading.
Chairman Bud, again, Ivan Ramirez, construction manager. And before we ask you to vote on this action item, we wanted to give you a trip down memory lane regarding this project, and to, especially for the people that don't have the luxury of driving on Highway 4, at least regularly, to show some of the improvements that we have made. But I want to begin by saying that the project was funded by state and local partnership funds, Regional Measure 2, Measure C, Measure J. Construction began in March of 2013 with completion of June 2017, so we just completed the work. Originally, the contract was awarded to a joint venture of C.C. Myers and Bay Cities Paving and Grading. As you might be aware, C.C. Myers, during the course of this contract, actually went out of business. So we had to transfer most of the work all of the work to Bay Cities Paving and Grading in accordance to their joint venture agreement. The total allotment that was given by the board was $56 million. The total cost as of right now is expected to be $53.6. So as of right now, we're showing a savings of $2.5 million at the conclusion of this contract. Some of the work we did is we put the E-BART station out in the city of Antioch. We put the truss bridge over Highway 4 westbound. We also constructed a cut and cover tunnel underneath westbound Highway 4 because as the E-BART cars travel along the median, they need to get under the highway in order to get to their maintenance facility in the city of Antioch. We also widened Hillcrest Avenue Bridge in both directions, and we also seismically retrofitted it to current seismic standards. You know, I require a lot of coordination with the adjacent projects. You've probably seen this slide before. We actually work with segment 3A, which was being administered by Caltrans, and by moving this simple detour or crossover, it allows us to do work out of stage at a quicker pace in our contract without any impacts to their contract, Caltrans contracts on segment 3A. One of the big challenges that we encountered is that we had a hard date to turn over the median to BART. Our contract didn't have that hard date. Any weather days the contractor kept. The BART contract didn't have that weather, so we had to actually, we thought we were on schedule, but suddenly late December and January of last year, the rainstorms started coming very hard, and we felt that we needed to do everything that we could to make sure that we deliver the median to BART. We came to the board, asked for permission to do a acceleration or mitigate as much as we could. And with that, we went ahead and did a lot of cement treatment in the median. And this picture showing here being distributed. And, you know, it was amazing because during some weekend nights, it was pouring rain, and I would be on the phone with staff in the field, and the contractor would have the scrapers going during all that rain, which is, you know, for me personally, it was unheard of up to that point. So with that, we were able to deliver the median, and it's very important because it doesn't matter what happened with BART, we were able to deliver that median to them at the time that we said we were going to deliver to them. These are pictures of before and after. This is the BART station. This is the park and ride lot that used to be Tri-Delta. Now it's Tri-Delta and BART. This is the old State Route 4 at Hillcrest. This is the new one. And with that, I'm open to any questions, and we would like for you to approve Resolution 1724P, which will accept the contract from the contractor with all the work being completed.
Commissioner Taylor.
So moved.
Second.
A motion by Taylor, second by Trotter. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Next item is, it's sort of a three-part item, but 4B5, 4B51, and 4B52. So 4B5 will be essentially an update, and 4B51, well, I guess I ought to read the whole item. 4B5, Countywide Transportation Plan Status Report. Staff will provide a brief update on the status of the Countywide Transportation Plan and EIR. And then the second part of it is 4B5.1, review of the draft 2017 Countywide Transportation Plan with an update. And then the third part is 4B5.2, public comment. And we do have a couple of people signed up for public comment. And after that, we will either take no action or take action. So you go ahead.
All right, thank you very much, Chairman Butt. Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Martin Engelman, Deputy Executive Director for Planning at the Contra Costa Transportation Authority. So I think you've had enough of this engineering and construction business, and let's get into some real good soft planning here. Talk about that for a little while. I'm here to give you an update on where we are with the 2017 Countywide Transportation Plan. And also, this will be an opportunity for you to receive comments from members of the public in the item that follows this. So this first item is an information item, and as you know, the draft 2017 Countywide Transportation Plan was released on May 24th. It's been out on the streets for a while now. The draft EIR was released on June 16th, 2017, and comments on both of these documents are due on August 1st. We have had a very robust public outreach effort, and I'd like to brief you on that. A summary of what we've accomplished to date is in your packet. We've been notifying our stakeholders about the CTP update through a number of channels. Our email subscriber system now includes 2,400 people, and we continue to expand that list as new people show up to our events and also log into the website, which you see up here on the screen, and we add them to the mailing list. We also have a set of media contacts who receive press advisories from us regarding meetings, workshops, and CTP-related milestones. Postings on CCTA's social media platforms and notifications to community calendar editors of local and regional media outlets also have helped us a lot in getting the word out about what's going on with the plan. Our online engagement tool, as you can see up on the screen, it gives our members of the public an overview of the plan, and when we get to the bottom of the page, there is an opportunity for anyone who wants to give us their comments, and we have been getting quite a few comments through this portal. We've included the ones we got in time for the mail out of this packet in your packet. You can actually read the text of the submittals, and since then we've gotten quite a number more, and all of these comments will be considered when we develop the final countywide plan. We held a countywide workshop on June 29th here in this building. Approximately 35 people attended. It was an open house. It consisted of individual stations staffed by members of the project team. It featured exhibit boards and information for participant review, and you can see pictures of that open house in your packet. We included a laptop station where members of the public could view the CTP website and type in their comments. And another station had hard copy documents, including the draft CTP and the draft EIR, and we were very impressed to see that people were actually reading the document and commenting as they were reading it. So copies of the meeting materials from that open house are included in your packet. I'd also like to direct your attention to the handout for this item, and we include a table showing the schedule of meetings. One of the critical factors in this plan is to bring together the 5 action plans for routes of regional significance developed by the sub-areas. And so at the top of this table, you can see that all of the regional transportation planning committees have met: WICTAC, Transpac, Transplan, LPMC, and I was just at TVTC earlier this week, and they have all reaffirmed their commitment to the action plans that they developed in 2014 that we included in the previous draft of the CTP, and they accepted the presentation on the CTP. We are going to have another meeting with SWAT in September where SWAT will reaffirm its commitment to the TVTC action plan, and the schedule here was a little bit staggered in that TVTC doesn't meet that often, so they didn't meet until July 17th, and now SWAT's not meeting in August. So the SWAT meeting would be in September to reaffirm their commitment to the TVTC action plan, and that would clear the way for the authority to adopt the plan in September, if we can make that schedule, and I'll talk about that in a moment. We've also presented the plan to the Concord Community Advisory Committee for the Concord Naval Weapons Station Reuse Project, to the Contra Costa Economic Partnership, and we'll have another presentation to the East Bay Leadership Council on the day the comments are due. We haven't gotten too many calls about bringing this to the councils. We have 2 council meetings coming up. We just did El Cerrito yesterday night, and the Richmond council meeting is next week. I want to thank our associate planner, Matt Kelly, who has been going out and doing a lot of these presentations, and some of them involve some late night work, so we really appreciate that. So far, we've only received 2 letters on the EIR, and many on the CTP, as I mentioned. Now, as far as the future schedule goes, we should be able to bring this plan back to you in September, but it depends very much on how many comments we get on the EIR. And we simply don't know until the day the comment period closes how many comment letters we get. And the challenge for staff will be to work through the summer, to work through August, to develop the responses to those comments. And our goal is to bring the final CTP to the Technical Coordinating Committee at a special meeting at the end of August, and if all goes well, bring the EIR and the plan to you in September. If we're unable to respond to the EIR in that time frame, then we would have to shift the schedule to an October deadline. We think we can certainly make October, and we don't really want to slip any further than that. So that's the status of the plan. Hopefully certify the EIR and adopt at your September meeting. And with that, I will close my presentation, and we can move on to public comments. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, any questions? Okay, we have three speakers. The first is Ralph Hoffman.
Ralph Hoffman from Walnut Creek, and I'm speaking as a member, senior advocate for the Senior Mobility Action Council, which is the most active committee of the Advisory Council on Aging. And I have the hard copies here of the CTP, both Volume 1 and Volume 2. But why am I coming here to comment? I'm really commenting about public comment rather than going online and sitting in my chair by my computer and making public comment. Simply this, for a senior citizen, I'm a little over 75 years old now, it's extremely important to keep an active mind and an active body by going to meetings and speaking instead of sitting in my chair and sending emails, sending comments. And it's a proven fact that walking, and I had to walk 3 blocks to Walnut Creek BART, I had to walk from the Route 9 stop over to here as well, is the best exercise that a senior citizen can get, or anyone can get, much better than hopping in a car and driving, and certainly much better than sitting at home. And we do have a obesity crisis in this country, and it has a lot to do with stuff we eat, like sugars, but also it has to do with doing more and more online stuff. And certainly you get a lot more comments, Martin, from online comments than you do coming here in public, but I don't get my exercise that way. So I got my exercise coming here and keeping my mind active, and my mouth active, and my body active. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next speaker, Lisa Vorbruggen.
Good evening. I'm Lisa Waterberg, and I'm here on behalf of the Building Industry Association of the Bay Area. As many of you know, the BIA and its members are heavily invested in the transportation system in Contra Costa County. For example, our members through development mitigation fees funded 25%. Last count I heard from the East Contra Costa Regional Mitigation Fee folks for the expansion of Highway 4, which I noted wasn't mentioned in that slide you saw on the Highway 4 expansion funding. I should think we should correct that the last time we come up and see that funding distribution. It should list the mitigation fee share of that. We led the Fix Highway 4 Now public outreach campaign. Our members wrote more than $200,000 in checks for financial support for the Measure J and Measure X campaigns. And we're ready to go out on the campaign trail again when you go out again for another sales tax measure. So we're here for you when it comes time to asking voters and spending our money on transportation. So within that context, I am here tonight to ask you respectfully to strike from the RTP, or the CTP, the proposed policy that would expand the regional mitigation program to include road and street maintenance and operations within and as new categories. One, we don't believe it's legal under state law to do so for reasons that I explained in the letter that you've all received today. But more importantly, we just cannot continue to pile on more costs onto our new housing. As you all know, we're in the midst of one of the worst housing affordability crises in recent memory. The Bay Area median home price was almost $1 million last month. That's almost double the state average. Now, obviously, we need more money for road maintenance. We all know that. Gas tax is going to go up 20 cents on November 1st, which will help some of the cities with some more road maintenance money. We know we're going to go back out for another gas tax measure at some point in the next 2 to 4 years, which will bring in more money. Granted, it won't be enough. It will never be enough. But the damage that we could do to our working families, to our children and our grandchildren who need a place to live, a place to rent, will far outweigh whatever benefit that money would bring to the transportation system. A National Association of Home Building study found that for every $1,000 increase in the price of a house, another 15,000 California households are priced out of the market. We just can't keep pushing our road maintenance shortfall onto our new home buyers and our renters. The transportation network belongs to all of us. All of us should share in the solutions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And the final speaker is Bruce Olson.
Good evening, Chair Butt and Commissioners. I am Bruce Olson, speaking for the Bike East Bay Advocacy Organization of Contra Costa County. Bicyclists and pedestrians would like to see the inclusion of a connection between the Contra Costa Canal Trail and the Iron Horse Trail, with a stop off at the Pacheco Transit Hub added to the reconstruction of the 680 for interchange in the CTP. This is a reasonable request. The cost will be the equivalent of pocket change found under the cushions of the sofa compared with the total cost of this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, while we do have an opportunity to take action on this, since the comment period doesn't end until the end of this, till the 1st of August, I would recommend that we take no action unless somebody wants to. Commissioner Trotter.
I just have a question. I don't think we should take action for all the reasons you've expressed. I raised the question whether it would be appropriate to hear from our attorney with respect to the legal arguments raised by Lisa Vorderbergen in her letter on behalf of the Building Industry Association, if not now, at some point.
I was just going to say we are analyzing it, so we can bring that back in the future.
Thank you. I think we need to address that.
Yeah. Commissioner Pierce.
Yeah, and to that point, TransPAC met a week or so ago, and we had a rather extensive discussion of this point. And we were unanimous in our recommendation that this requirement be removed from the countywide plan. This goes beyond what we've asked of developers for, there's that word nexus again, for doing capital improvements that are required as a direct impact of new development. That's one thing. But ongoing maintenance and operation of a facility or a service by one set of homeowners that actually wind up benefiting everyone does not seem to us to be what we're trying to do. And so we asked unanimously that that piece be taken out of the plan. That was a Transpac unanimous recommendation.
Mr. Roman?
And being in one of those areas of the county that have some hefty impact fees on specifically roads, I think we're up to $18,000 a house now. And as Ms. Vordenberg pointed out, it paid for the original bypass that we put in first, was strictly done with monies, with fee money, and a great deal of what we did for Highway 4 went there. And the transplant met just last week. We didn't have an opportunity to discuss this particular letter, but I think we should, hopefully before, if we can meet in August sometime, we'll have to talk with that. But I would agree with the direction that Transpac is taking on this, and restrict these and strike the words from the plan.
Commissioner Mitchell.
Thank you. And just to follow up, and I appreciate that you'll be looking at the legality of this, but whether it, even if it is legal, and I've read Ms. Vorderbergen's letter, and she cites various things. I'm not a lawyer, but it seemed pretty straightforward to me. Even if it is, we need to take the language out.
Okay, anything else? Nope. Mr. Askew.
I just think that we have spent a lot of time talking about the guiding principles so that we get our fair share. I think we can apply the same guiding principles to this situation. It isn't equitable and we need to be consistent.
Commissioner Arnert.
I just want to weigh in as sort of that representative for the 19 cities. I think if we all were sitting in the same room together, I think we would agree on this, that this is probably something that should be removed. I think we have all done a good job in trying to be fair and equitable in our local impact fees to address the capital side. And to be fair to our taxpayers, aside from the legal, there's a hefty tax that has just been put in place that's coming back directly to us for maintenance. And it's restricted to do that. So I think we ought to consider that. The other thing is I really haven't heard anybody comment, because this is the second time we've heard this request about the trail connection at the interchange. Staff, are we looking at this, or is there another issue here that is preventing us from addressing it, or have we already made a comment to it?
As this is in Transpac's sort of sphere here, I was actually chatting with our staff earlier today, and we think that, and this is something that I'm going to bring back to, excuse me, to Transpac, but I think there are some regional projects of a network of bike lanes that can easily traverse this area. There are streets that make those connections. The problem is they don't have bike lanes. And it would be, reasonably efficient to add bike lanes to those streets that go through and would connect basically the Pacheco Transit Center all the way to the other side of 242. And it's not a straight line, but it would get people there without, having to trip over the freeway.
I think we'd appreciate hearing from Transpac on the help.
I think we'll be bringing that back.
Director Iwasaki.
Commissioners, based on what I just heard, do we want MALA to do an analysis on the legality, or? Okay. Is that a unanimous no? Okay, thank you. Thank you.
So I think we're hearing a consensus that we just want to take that out. Okay, I don't have a motion from anybody for any specific action, so this item is concluded. Correspondence and communications, none. Are there any associated committee reports? Anybody have anything? Okay.
I would give it, I'm not sure if it fits in here, just to report out because I was the passionate person. We had MTC representatives in Danville telling us about how great the operational status of the HOV lanes. And they're out selling it because people are beginning to understand how the signs are up, how it's going to be run. I just have to confess, there was one thing. You've always heard that tolling HOV lanes is just a Lexus lane. I actually got a response, and they said, well, we actually looked at how many Lexuses. And do you know what the point is? That was the dumbest thing I've ever heard. It's not. It's a euphemism for people who can afford it, but somebody actually studied the number of Lexuses. That was a little bit off the mark in reality check.
I call them Lexi. Multiple Lexus or Lexi.
Right. So I just hope as we all go around that, and maybe our MTC reps, maybe we ought to have a reality check that's not really checking for the number of
So how
those
many
kinds
was
of cars. See? There you go. Well, I happen to drive a Mercedes, so guess what? That's in that category. The only issue I wanted to raise is that there is concern that as you look at the 680 corridor through the San Ramon Valley, there's no capacity. We're in the summertime, which is kind of our Friday lights almost every day. It took 45 minutes to get from downtown Danville and to here, and it took 2 years ago at rush hour traffic 45 minutes to get here. There were no accidents today. So the concern is we're spending a lot of money to toll this. The northbound lane is so jammed because of the singular reason that we drop a lane to get through the pinch point. And so us as an agency, that falls on us to figure out how to get the regional money. It's like a river with a boulder sticking out. And until we fix that, there's nothing else we're going to do. And I know we're working on concepts. And our departing deputy director had some great ideas. We just got to find the money.
Okay, so we're on associated committee reports right now.
Can I just respond to
Okay.
Commissioner Arndrich's? No, I just want to say, first of all, point well taken. As the chair of the Data Oversight Committee, I will pass that on so we get good answers. But the second piece is your wish is our command. When Randy and I were going through the spreadsheet, we realized we had an extra $90 million, so we put it in the express lanes. So the big thing with that 680 northbound is getting that corridor through the knot. So there you go.
Thank you.
Okay, next item, chair's comments and reports. I've already made my comments. Commissioners' comments and reports. Anything? Yes, Amy.
Pardon me, but I want to take my prerogative as a member of this august board to just say thank you to Randy Iwasaki for helping our little city of Orinda. As you know, we had this devastating sinkhole that closed Minor Road. It was huge. And it resulted in having to reroute school buses and county connection buses and the traffic. And we opened it on a couple days before, as we've learned from Contra Costa County, promise and then deliver early. It's going to be, at this point, it's about a $3 million project. Our capital budget is a little bit over twice that. Our operating budget is about $11 million. So you can see the scope of that particular project. And when this happened in the morning, 8:30, the road was closed, I got on the phone and called Randy. He was the first person that we called. And I think what was important about his role is that he helped us see the pathway through this disaster in terms of the federal and the state reimbursement. He was phenomenal. He helped us understand how we needed to go, what resources we needed to bring in. He helped us identify contractors that could provide the technical support to what we did. So I just really want to thank you. And I know he's here for all of you if any of our jurisdictions have these kinds of problems. And we could not have done what we did without him. And when we get to the day where we start seeing our federal dollars come back to reimburse the city for this project, we will be indeed grateful for his leadership and help. So thank you very much.
I want to second that. Richmond, several of us have had sinkholes now. I believe one of them sent Moraga into bankruptcy, right? Or something like that. But, you know, if you got a sinkhole, it's not better call Saul, it's better call Randy. Okay, you're on, Randy.
Commissioners, thank you for that. I appreciate that. But that's really why you hire the team that you hire, is because we have a diverse kind of experience, and we can help where we can help, and we don't help where we can't help, but we like helping. That's what you pay us to do. So we appreciate the recognition. We've had a number of tours out at Gomentum Station. Bay Area Council was one of them. There was a very good interaction with the businesses, and Mr. Wonderman was out there as well, and so I thought that went very well. The Napa County Supervisor emailed Executive Director Steve Heminger at MTC about how do we bring technology to Napa, how do we bring the self-driving car to Napa, and his email actually said, you need to talk to my counterpart at CCTA, who used to, I couldn't believe it. I saved the email. I still have it framed in my office. Counterpart from CCTA. And so we had a meeting with Supervisor Pedroza. They really want to try to figure out ways of using technology. So back to Interstate 680, we're trying to make a built environment more efficient. And that is very, very difficult, as you know. So that one boulder there is there, and we have to figure out a way of fixing it. And we have a seven-pronged approach. I did present the seven-pronged approach to the down at Danville last Saturday. And the only comment I got was, why do you build an HOV lane instead of a mixed flow lane? Well, so number one, when you add capacity, you're going to have to do an HOV lane. That's number one. But number two, we're no longer counting cars. We're counting occupancy. And so we're trying to get more people in those cars to get them through, to incentivize that. And it's an air quality tool. And so he actually said, thank you for that answer. So there was a lot of interest in the whole Interstate 680. If we don't do anything, the models show we're going to have another 60 minutes of delay. Another 60 minutes of delay. What does that do? People quit working down south. People look for other jobs. And it's just going to create a problem for our economy. And so we've got to fix that. So Tim Hale, I believe, is going to make a presentation tomorrow. So you'll get a better view of that seven-pronged approach. Made a presentation in Shanghai at the 4th China Intelligent and Connected Vehicle Congress. They want to know how they can partner with us. They have 7 test beds being built in China, and they want to partner with us. Ivan is becoming known as a drone expert around the United States, and so we're using drones out on Balfour to make sure the taxpayers are getting their money's worth, the surveyors are safe. I think that ultimately you'll see more surveying done by drone. You see a lot of it in horizontal construction where people can't get to. The drones will fly in, take pictures of the and I think that's more your bailiwick, Commissioner Arnerich, but the drone's out there. And then we're trying to create the world's largest SAV, shared autonomous vehicle pilot project with 4 countries, the country of Singapore, the country of Australia, the country of New Zealand, and the country of Contra Costa. We have a 4-country agreement, and we're getting ready to sign that. And the idea is to pool information about our pilot. For the first time in the history of parades, 4th of July parades in the United States, the autonomous vehicle was the Grand Marshal, and it got a lot of airplay. They ran it on CBS all over the nation. People were saying, hey, that's pretty cool. And then we recently signed an agreement with the Kingdom of the Netherlands. And so they want to partner with us. Councilwoman Carlin Obringer has agreed to be the focal point between the country of the Netherlands and Contra Costa, Concord area, to try to figure out ways of bringing jobs here. And so we're trying to fix that jobs housing balance that you see as a problem on 680, because those people that go to work in the morning, they're all trying to get home at the same time in the evening. That's why it takes you an hour to go 12 miles. So that's my report. Does anybody have any questions?
Great.
Okay, thank you.
Does anybody have anything? Next meeting is September the 20th. Enjoy your vacation in August. This meeting is adjourned.